Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm with JD Smokey Rameriz. How you doing?
I am good. It is time for the obligatory weather report. Man, it has been super cold here. You know what's crazy? It actually snowed twice since the last time I talked to you, which is very weird because we went almost a decade without real accumulative snow, and we've had it twice recently. And one time it was like 3 or 4 inches, which was absolutely crazy. We was able to build snowmans and everything, which is very abnormal for this part of the country. But so it got a little warm in between, and then it snowed again, and it was well down into the teens in Fahrenheit. And then it got really warm. It felt like summertime for about 2 weeks, and now it is freezing once again. I think we were below freezing probably for the better part of yesterday, overnight, and even into today. It might be just above freezing right now. Very unusual. But how are you, JJ?
I'm doing fine, and we actually had it freezing for about 2 or 3 weeks now, and I think yesterday was the first day where we had like decent temperatures again. I think it was like 9 degrees or so yesterday, and I think it was even a bit higher today. I think we got double digits today, so that is Celsius, of course. And so, yeah, I mean, it's actually, I forgot to close the window earlier, and it was actually still quite comfortable in that room, despite the fact that the window was open for a while, so, yeah, no, it's actually, like, a decently warm day, but it's probably, like, I can't look at the temperature right now. Yeah, I think it's a bit bright in here with the studio lights, but I think it's 8 degrees now outside, but it's already dark, so, you know.
Yeah, you guys, you're fairly north, right? So don't you have really long nights or days right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the earliest it went dark just from like, I mean, obviously, with weather it can sometimes be dark all day, but just from terms of like actual day-night cycle on a clear day, I think the earliest we've had it getting dark at sort of around the winter solstice was about 4 p.m.
Wow, yeah. At earliest was around 5:30, but yeah, that's crazy. So you have super long nights.
Yeah, that is true, but also at the same time,
trying to think,
like sometimes you sing outside in summer and it's like after 10 and it's still bright, so it's a trade-off.
All right. Yeah, definitely. You have super long days there in the summer, but I'm trying to think. We we had a listener subscriber that was somewhere in the Nordic region, very far north. I can't remember exactly where it was though. But yeah, he was it was one of those almost 24 hours of darkness where he was at winter, and then during the summer, it's almost the opposite. I mean, it's got to be hard to sleep in those conditions. You have to black out the windows and whatnot.
That's a very American thing of you to say. We have window shutters that are like, I was gonna say airtight. That are like very light tight. Like you don't you could if you close those during the day, you have absolutely no light coming in. That's like very normal.
Oh wow, we don't. Yeah, we don't have shutters. We do have. I think we may have talked about that before. We do have the decorative shutters on some houses, but for the most part, no, we don't have working shutters.
Yeah, but no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if shutters is exactly the right term, but I think it's probably the closest. It's basically like a garage door. I mean, it's exactly functionality, right? It's like it rolls up and then you roll it down.
Yeah. Huh.
I don't know, like what the exact correct terminology for that is, but I think shutters is probably the closest we're gonna get. Right, we do have an actual topic as well. I think we've touched on this a little bit before, and recently with Sergei I talked about the internet getting worse, but this one is a bit more specific. It's, will social media be the downfall of society? Okay, that's maybe a little extreme, but
but you never know. It's very possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those where predicting that social media is gonna be the end of us is like a very bad prediction. Because either it happens, and no one's gonna be like nobody's gonna care that you made the prediction, or it doesn't happen and you look like an idiot, right? So
yeah,
it's like
but
predicting
isn't
the
that
world
the
is gonna
case
end.
of
It's like
like
either the world ends and no one's gonna know that you predicted it correctly,
yeah,
or it doesn't end and everyone thinks you're an idiot, right? Like it's just a bad call to make.
yeah. But unless a lot of doomsayers could be making predictions in the hopes of correcting something that's wrong, so that it doesn't happen. In that case, you're happy that the prediction didn't come true, right?
Yeah, but that's also one of those things where like, it's a thing where like the prevention people are always like on the chopping block, where it's like, well, I mean, like, oh yeah, terrorist prevention, like, well, there hasn't been any terrorist attacks in years. Like, what are we even paying you for? It's like because to make sure that this doesn't happen, right? Like the fact that there haven't been any attacks proves that we are worth it, right? And
yeah,
it's that thing whenever like disease prevention, right? Like any sort of like again, terrorism and disease are probably the two most common ones that you hear about. Like, but like if they're doing cybersecurity as well, right? It's like what are we paying for? There have been no attacks on us. Like there have been no attacks on us that affected us. Like we blocked every attack that came in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, cybersecurity is like a little different because sometimes, I mean, I guess for some of the other ones maybe as well, but like you can sometimes point at like, hey, here is someone attempted to get in and we blocked them.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you have like an automatic firewall, there's gonna be a lot of stuff that is just like not gonna be like even noted as an attack. Like, oh yeah, like something tried to connect to this port and it didn't work. Like, was that someone just like trying to access the wrong port, or was it a malicious attack? Who's to say? It's like, would this have been a bigger threat?
But yeah, but in the end, you should be glad that you heard that person because it hasn't happened. So
yeah. So yeah, social media. It's complicated because there are genuine upsides, but I do think the downsides are very real.
Oh, one thing I was noticing recently is on the topic of racism, and I think it's, of course, it never dies. The internet is always on fire about racism constantly. I don't know if it's really that bad. I mean, you stay tuned to a lot of social media, maybe, or at least media in America, so maybe you see it a lot too. But I feel like it's probably worse than most countries, maybe South Africa or something like that, where there's a great mix of the population, or maybe even in the UK in certain places. But since the Super Bowl halftime happened, the topic of racism is on fire again, even though I watched the Super Bowl halftime and I'm like, I don't really see much racism involved here. But, it was an all black performance.
Yeah.
And well, what people would say is two black quarterbacks, which is unusual in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I didn't really see it. And even the Patriots, I don't see how they could be mad about that, considering they made an American flag out of humans during there. And Samuel L. Jackson was dressed up as Uncle Sam. Like, I don't see where they're pulling racism from, but like some people say, racism will never die as long as everyone is still on the topic of racism. You're never going to end it if we don't just end it.
Yeah.
But thinking that, oh, go ahead.
I've seen some tweets being shared where people were mad about the halftime show because of, black people being there, or it being made up predominantly of black people. And yes, there was a racist backlash. The question is, and that's incredibly hard to evaluate, how large was it? Right? Because if 5 people got angry on Twitter and those tweets happened to get a lot of traction, like, that doesn't mean anything. If it's thousands of people that got angry at it, then that is maybe something to be taken seriously. And it's like, it's basically impossible to tell. Even if there have been thousands or tens of thousands of accounts, theoretically, that did tweet that sort of stuff, which I can't say that there have been necessarily, then you still don't know how many people are behind that, right? With like botnets and alt accounts and person trying to stir up anything they can, right? It's like, who's to say? I genuinely don't know. And I don't know if that one in particular was a big deal. I mean, racism definitely exists. But like, not everything needs to be seen through the lens of race either. So I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked into like the Super Bowl thing enough to know how big the backlash was,
Mm.
because it's always tricky to say like, oh, someone shared like, oh, there was a racist tweet. And it's like, well, yes, there will
Yeah.
always be a racist tweet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like, how reflective is that of the discussion? But I also, I mean, my interest in football is waxing and waning. Um, and I certainly don't care about the Super Bowl halftime show, right? Like that, I've
Yeah.
never really cared about. I don't get it, right? Like the whole like, oh, the Super Bowl halftime show, the Super Bowl ads. It's like, okay, how about the Super Bowl football game? How about that one?
Exactly.
Um,
Secondary at this point.
but yeah, I have never super cared about the stuff around the Super Bowl. Um, I mean, the NFL isn't even my favorite football league at this point, so like, you know.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Actually, it may not be my favorite at this point either. I think college football might be my favorite overall, but I still love the NFL for sure. And the reason I would be watching in the first place is to watch the football game. But to most of the world, it's almost secondary at this point. It's just the event that you watch, whether you've watched a football game at all in there. You know, everybody watches it, and half the people don't know why they're watching it. It's just what you're supposed to do. But I mean, it may have started with just a few posts or whatever. Whoever was mad about it, there's always going to be racist people out there who feel they need to share their opinion and who feel good about stirring up controversy over race because somewhere deep inside they have this connection with their psyche that they feel good about racism existing, and perception is reality because one person makes the post and it's shared by thousands of people like, look how ridiculous this post is. So people start assuming, oh yeah, so all white people are racist and they're mad about that, or the majority or something like that, you know. And then there will be backlash from the other side. Someone who actually is racist on the other side is going to throw a tweet back or whatever social media post, and then that gets shared, and then it just perpetuates the racial war. I guess it's more of a cold war, not really because we're not fighting a racial war out in the streets. It's all with words and it's all over social media. I think social media existed, there was this point where racism felt like it was dying in America. It was less and less and less. But then social media stirred up the flames again and the fire grew and got much bigger. And I was telling a person this recently that out in the streets in my daily life, you don't really see racism. Like, yes, I know it's probably happening somewhere. The average person is not experiencing racism out in the streets. But if you turn on social media, you're going to see racism there. People say, well, racism will never end until we all talk about it. Like, well, we're not talking about it out in the streets, and you don't really see it that much. But on the internet, it is talked about constantly at all times, and that's where racism thrives. So in that aspect, I look at it just for that subject, you know, is yeah, social media could be the downfall of society.
Yeah, I think it's sort of two things that are happening there, right? The first one is that, and this is not just for racism, it's like for a lot of like bad news and sort of things. Where it's like, it seems like the world's getting worse,
Mm-hmm.
not because it is getting worse. I mean, maybe right now it almost seems like it might actually be, but like for a while there, like it's just that you hear about bad things happening a lot more than you did before. Those things were happening
Mm-hmm.
just as much before, if not more, but you weren't as aware of them because it wasn't as easy to spread them. Therefore, uh, that seems to amplify it, even if like it amplifies, I guess, the information, not necessarily the occurrences. The other thing is that the internet allows niche communities that are like very distributed to come together, right? So if you have like one racist guy in town, like that doesn't really matter because no one's gonna like, because if he's openly racist, right? People are gonna call him out for it, and that's that. Um, but if you have like one racist guy in every town, and they all get together on the internet, suddenly you have like a big community of racists, and that
Mm-hmm.
is a big problem. But it's also the same happens the other way around too, right? Like it's like niche communities being able to form that wouldn't have been able to form in real life because of distance. Because again, right, like we're talking about individuals that have maybe more niche beliefs or hobbies or anything really that wouldn't be able to form a community because they're distributed. And so it's great when people can find community online, right, and can find like-minded people. It's less great when the like interest in like-minded people is like racism or something, right? Where like, oh,
yeah,
that is not good. And so it really goes both ways. And I feel like some of that depends on your own beliefs on certain issues. I mean, obviously, racism I feel like is a pretty obvious bad thing, but when it comes to like niche political beliefs, for example, you can easily say like, oh, hey, look, the niche political belief I like gets to have a community online finally, where we couldn't have had one in real life. But also the niche political opinion that I don't like can also have a shared platform, which I don't really like as much. And it's like, yeah, sure, right, but like, it's hard to say which one of those is necessarily good or bad, just because you like one better than the other. What was I gonna say? I feel like there was another point I was trying to make here, but you take it.
Yeah. Well, don't you feel like though those certain aspects of beliefs that are harmful to society, that they had a chance at dying out when there wasn't this community that the single person in the town could reach out to, that it almost fuels their fire in that way?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that, ideas don't die, right? Like that, it's sort of a thing where, like, yes, sometimes ideas do go dormant, right, and it becomes more and more fringe. But as long as there's someone who still believes it, or even someone who's susceptible to believing it if they come across the information, like it can come back, and the internet really allows for like basically any belief to take hold in some form. It's one of those things where you can look at how neo-Nazis organize online and say like that's a terrible thing, but at the same time, like the Arab Spring was mostly organized online as well, and most people I think would say that was a good thing. And so it gets very difficult where the same things can happen for opposite effects, right? Where it's people actually realize that they're not the only ones who don't like the authoritarian government, because people online can just talk about it more freely. Because it's very hard to restrict online speech. Like, even if you do have firewalls and like you block certain sites, there's always VPNs and whatnot, it's kind of hard to crack down on everything. I guess you could maybe have whitelisting rather than blacklisting. That might... I'm not trying to get people ideas. And it's like, okay, yeah, great, right? We all realize that we don't like our authoritarian regime, and therefore we can overthrow it if we all work together. At the same time, sometimes there are people who don't like their governments, who maybe we prefer the government over those people, right? Again, right, the Nazis come to mind. Where there is increasing, like, far-right extremism that has been largely, at least initially, organized through the web, right? And those groups manage to grow and manage to recruit through the internet. They got access to groups that are somewhat predisposed to believing their ideology and are easy to bait, right? I mean, it's the whole thing about like the idea of like lonely young men who feel like they don't have a purpose, right? It's sort of the stereotype there, where they then find community online, and it turns out that community is neo-Nazis or is Islamist extremists or whatever, and they then fall down that rabbit hole. And that's bad and would be a lot harder to do if not for the internet.
Yeah.
But good ideas can spread in theory just as well, right? And so it always ends up being this double-edged sword, where even the specific aspects oftentimes that are bad, at least in these terms, can be just as well used for good.
Do you think the good ideas, how can I put this? Someone who's into the good ideas could actually dive down that rabbit hole as fast as someone with the bad ideas. Like, if I can explain this, someone who's in their daily life before getting on the internet is slightly right or slightly left, or whatever niche they're into, and then they get on the internet and find out that there's a lot of people that are way deeper into this than I am, and that draws their attention, and they keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and then all of a sudden they're walking down the street with swastika flags, or whatever the case may be for that particular group, and screaming, "I hate everything," whereas that person would have just had those feelings in his heart before he got on the internet and found that there's a group where he could take it that far and got into it. Do you think people that good, that have beneficial beliefs that can help society, do you think they really perpetuate themselves farther in that direction as much as the people in the negative direction?
I don't know. I mean, the internet has been known to radicalize people in any given direction, right? It's that thing where
Mm-hmm.
the algorithms, and this is where we talk about how social media is structured specifically, right? Because social media really isn't what it used to be, right? Like social networks used to just be like places where you could talk to your friends or whatever. But with those like public feeds, with Twitter, and I mean even YouTube, right? Like those sort of platforms, like they try to keep you on the platform because they make their money from collecting your data and selling you ads. And both of which you can only do if you're on their platform. I mean, Google can also track you if you're off platform because of like embedded cookies or whatever, but generally speaking, they want to keep you on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will make you see things that keep you on the platform. And generally speaking, the way the human brain works is we don't really react to things that we're used to the same way that we do to something that is novel. And so there's always a thing where like the brain always compares things to the most extreme, right? It's a thing where like, is this pleasurable? It's like, well, is it more pleasurable than the most pleasurable experience I've ever had, right? Like, it's that thing, right? Like, that's why it's like, oh, it's literally better than sex, right? Like, it's like, people are, like, intentionally making an extreme comparison because, like, that's how the brain on some level works, right? You are comparing to extremes. You're often like, is this the best ever, right? Like, is this the worst ever? Is this, like, whatever, right? It doesn't have to always be, like, those kinds of algorithms, but, like, and so it wants to show you things that are ever so slightly more extreme than what you currently believe. Because that is going to have a stronger reaction, or you're going to have a stronger reaction to that than to something that you already believe in full. At the same time, it probably won't go like all the way right away because it's probably going to be off-putting, right? That's often there's a thing where like someone who's like fairly at the center or like center right or whatever, as you said, right? Like they go on the internet and they get exposed to some content that's like a little bit further to the right. And then it slowly radicalizes them until they eventually become Nazis. And those people would have been put off by the Nazis at first. But over time, those ideas seep in. And so that is also, that radicalizing effect is like very well documented at this point on social media. That is, I think it's generally bad that it happens, but I do think it can happen in all directions. You generally hear about it more happening towards the right. I don't know to what degree that is because the right is better at being online. Again, right, like the stereotype is always like that of the lonely young men that get radicalized. I don't know if people don't pay as much attention to what happens to women, or if they are just less prone to being radicalized or less online. I don't know. I genuinely have no idea. But it is true that right-wing spaces are usually more welcoming to men than left-wing spaces are oftentimes. It's one of those unfortunate things where, because the left wing, and this gets into like the identity politics of it all, tends to be focused a lot on helping disadvantaged groups, that leaves, the cisgendered heterosexual white man,
yes,
as like the one group they don't really care about as much. Now, I don't think you're gonna find that many people on the left who actually would actively say they don't like white guys. It's just that it's not a priority, right? And so oftentimes when young white men go online, they see those groups talking about everyone but them, right? Like, oh, we need to help black people, we need to help trans people, we need to help women, right? And it's like, hey, where am I in all of this? Why am I left behind, right? Yeah. And so then naturally they end up drifting more towards the right-wing spaces. Because they are like, hey, come on in, you're one of us.
Yeah, because they feel disenfranchised at that point. Yes.
And also, the other aspect is the language policing, right? The left has an uncomfortable tendency to be a little too critical, I feel like, of people that use the wrong words sometimes, right? You don't express yourself the right way, and instead of someone going like, hey, by the way, like, this is considered offensive, like, maybe try saying it this way instead, right? Like, sometimes people just don't know, right? Sometimes people will use slurs, and they just don't know, right? Sometimes people will just not know much about the topic, and they'll just say how it comes to their mind, and it's just maybe not how we talk about those things optimally.
Yeah.
And then the left tends to very much not go like, hey, by the way, I mean, some people do, but there's enough people who are like, fuck you, you're a Nazi, you're a right-wing, whatever, like, and guess where those people end up, right? Because if they just get pushed back from one side, guess where they get pushed, right? And so, I feel like there is, I don't think it's inherently that the political ideas of the left are necessarily less prone to that amplification. It's just that the actual communities that exist online are somehow less welcoming. Again, especially to white men. And so that is where, when you're looking for community, you end up on the right. That's kind of just like what happens. And that is quite unfortunate, I find. But like the problem is there's no easy way to fix that, because again, the problem at the end of the day are the people, right? So if the people on the left are not welcoming, you can't change the system in such a way that like young white guys find themselves more drawn to the left. You know, some people might be more predisposed to those ideas, right? That's oftentimes the thing. If you already have strong political or moral beliefs, then you're less likely, I think, to end up on the other side of those beliefs. Because the problem is that I think most, like, teenagers, even a lot of 20-somethings, just, like, aren't into politics, right? And you don't think about this stuff too much. And that's fine, right? Like, you don't have to be into it. But the problem is, then you can end up on any position, right? You don't have some sort of, like, core beliefs to hold on to in that regard. And then you get dragged to wherever the algorithms that drag you. And, again, for at least certain groups, again, young white men are usually what is talked about in this context. It happens to be right, usually. And so I think good ideas can spread online. It's just that sometimes the people that believe those good ideas have some very bad habits that are off-putting to people.
It does feel like the extreme right wing is much more organized than the extreme left wing, for sure. The extreme left wing seems like just a spattering across everywhere, whereas wings, it almost feels like they are more militarized. Not really militarized, but I don't even know what's the word I want to use. Just militant maybe, but or more organized. You know, extreme left wing. You might watch a video on TikTok of an individual who believes something extremely left, whereas you'll run across these red pill sites or something like that, where there's an entire community more closely knit than the left wing does. And maybe that's just a symptom of the ideology itself, that these are all individuals on one side, whereas this is a close-knit group on the other side.
Yeah, so, I mean, especially if we're talking about like the sort of like lib-left versus alt-right thing, right? When we're talking about fascism. It's like fascism is inherently a very organized and hierarchical ideology. So it makes sense that there would be organization and hierarchy there, right? Whereas sort of the more hippie-like, I guess, like the as a lot of the liberal left these days is, right? Like more individualistic, and that sort of thing. And like they talk about community sometimes, and there are definitely communities, but there are usually no structures, really, right? Like the communities are friend groups or like group chats or whatever. Like, but there are rarely like actual like organizations. They exist, of course, but then there's also the famous left-wing infighting, right? I think there were 3 different socialist candidates for president in the most recent U.S. presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not being like a right winger calling everyone left or center socialist. There were literally 3 distinct parties that had socialist in their name that were running presidential candidates. That is not considering Cornel West, who was running as an independent. That is not talking about the Greens, right? Like, which I mean are not particularly socialist. It's like, dude, like, none of you are gonna get anywhere close to winning. Like, at least get behind one candidate, right? Like, maybe if you all get together and you get behind one candidate, maybe you can get 5% and get some federal funding for your next election efforts, right? But like, what are you doing? Like, most of those aren't even running in enough states to even theoretically win the Electoral College. Not that they ever would in reality. It's like, what is this? What are you doing? What are you trying to do? And why is no one running for a House seat? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting into my gripes about political movements in the US. Always trying to go for the presidency, which they're never going to get, rather than going for realistic goals like House seats or state legislatures or even like city councils or whatever. Like, start small, build up. Like, this top-down thing of like, oh, if we get a president, then we can build a party around that. Like, that doesn't obviously not work.
Well, no, because the left are too split on individual stances, you know, the slightest things. Instead of compromising and meeting in the middle, it's like, no, but you hate this idea, so I am not part of you, you know. And that's the individualism that I was talking about. You know, they're not going to come together because they need it to be all or nothing. Whereas you see on the right, you know, the libertarians will say, okay, well, let's work with the Republicans and let's work with the neocons, you know, and all this, and they'll all come together to one single group that actually gains power.
I do wonder if that will change a little bit, though, because, and I mean, obviously that depends also like on the countries and whatnot, but I think there has been like a more sort of progressive, liberal, left-wing kind of trend in politics for a while that seems to be reversing now. And there is a general truth that oftentimes groups in power have a lot of infighting, because that's when it actually like gets to brass tacks. This is when we have to actually like decide like what we actually want to put in law, like what we actually want to do. And sometimes it's the opposition that is a lot more united, because while we might not agree on what we want to do, we know we don't like those people, right? We don't like who's currently in charge. We don't like their ideology. And so let's focus on getting those out of the way, and then we can like hash out the details of what we want to put in place. And so oftentimes the opposition is more united as well. It's not just a left-right thing. It's also a little bit like a power opposition thing. Now, there has certainly been left-wing infighting during Republican presidencies, right? This is not... And there's also been some right-wing infighting here and there as well. But the fact of the matter is, I think a Republican hasn't won the popular vote in a while. Trump's second term is the first time a Republican has won the popular vote since, 2004? And so...
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that people left of center, right? Whether they be Democrats or socialists or whatever, right? Like anyone who's left of the Republicans, effectively, right? Anyone who's like would broadly fall into the Democratic electorate because two-party system, and that's its whole issue in its own right. Like they effectively, even if they weren't like in power strictly speaking the whole time, they still had the majority. They still had a lot of power legislatively, the executive function-wise, right? Like presidency has been filled by Democrats for a while there, right? Like, I mean, after Bush, wait, let me get straight. After Bush, that was Obama for 8 years. Then it was Trump for 4, but everyone saw that as an outlier, right? Like, Trump wasn't a traditional Republican, and he still isn't, but like the Republican Party changed to be more like him. But like, Trump was a bit of an outlier, and while I think the opposition to him was in some ways more united, it is still, like, at the time it was a bit of a weird case, and then Biden came into office, and it's back to where it was under Obama, basically, right? I mean, I could point you to the differences between their ideologies in some ways, but that's not really the point, right? The point is, the left, broadly speaking, is in charge, right? And so the right is uniting, they're uniting behind Trump, who at that point I think was probably the best shot at winning. And now Trump is in power, and now it's not an outlier, right? Like, now he won the popular vote. Now he has, like, a more coherent ideology. Now the party's actually behind him. So, if there is going to be a time where the American left unites, it probably is soon, right? Like, it's not fully happening yet, but I think, like, opposition to Trump is already, like, making people a bit less particular about the specifics in terms of, like, the left wing. Like, oh yeah, like, we might not agree on everything.
Well, they saw how right did it,
right? So, so I think there might be a bit of a thing. We've also seen, like, some Republican fighting already. Although, admittedly, the Republicans are pretty good at suppressing dissent. But there has been, like, the whole thing about, like, Steve Bannon and Elon Musk, like, really not liking each other, and there have been, like, there's been some movement there, and so I could see at least the American left becoming more unified in the next 3.5 years or whatever, where the right gets maybe a bit less unified at the same time. And I think a lot of that will, to a lesser extent, hold true for other countries as well, because the right is, generally speaking, on the rise. Now, there's also a general anti-incumbency thing, and that goes with the whole idea of, like, the left having been, not, like, super powerful, but certainly, like, a bit more present in a lot of countries. Germany is heading for an election, well, tomorrow, as of the release of this video. By the way, for all the Germans watching, go vote. But, you know, and we've had a left-leaning government, Social Democrats, Greens, and fucking hell, the FDP. But now, based on the polling, it's going to be suggested that the largest party is going to be the CDU, the center-right party. So we're already seeing the right winning here as well, and I don't know what it's going to do to left here, but with the CDU and AfD combined having over 50%, I wonder, I mean, if they go into coalition together, which the CDU said they weren't gonna, I think this could also provoke, like, a lot of backlash. There's already been a lot of protests against the AfD because the CDU got a bill passed with their help. Actually, I'm not sure if that actually passed second reading, but it passed the first reading, and that is a thing where, like, when the right comes together, or when the right, like, gets power, the left's like, oh shit, we, like, gotta get our shit together and, like, actually, like, focus on the right, right? Like, infighting's not helping us. And I think the same happens on the right if the left is in power. And so, I mean, there's already talk about, in the UK, right, with the Tories and Reform, there's already talk about, like, maybe they're gonna try to, like, get the shit together. It doesn't seem like they're gonna, like, unify, because I don't think the Tories want to put Farage in charge, and I don't think he wants to do anything unless he's in charge. But there's already talks there about, like, the right coming together now that Labour's in power, right? And so you see that thing where, like, the opposition is oftentimes more united than the government, right? We've seen, again, if you look at Labour, like, one of their first votes, they had, like, 10 defectors. Not quite. But I think, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 defectors. And they were, like, instantly had their whips withdrawn and stuff. So, like, there was, like, already infighting happening there. They're trying to revive the Blue Labour movement, which, I don't know. But it's already, like, Labour's already starting to, like, fracture a little bit now that they're in power. And that tends to happen. And so I think that effect is also, now we're talking about politics, we're talking social media, but I do think it does more broadly hold true about the social dynamics that we said, right? Where, like, those that see themselves as an opposition oftentimes will have an easier time coming together with people that are maybe ideologically not that close to them, as long as they are also opposed to those who are currently in power.
And once you gain power, then the infighting starts over individual stances. Yeah. But one last thing we can touch on, X. How do you feel about X? Do you ever go on there?
No. I
was wondering what your stance was after Elon and the whole salute thing. Since you are a German.
Yeah, no, that's...
what what was your feelings about that?
They say history repeats itself, and I don't like it. Yeah, no, I mean, I've never really liked Twitter all that much to begin with. Like, when I first learned about Twitter, I thought it was a cool idea, and I still think it is a cool idea. But in practice, it's like it gets very political. It gets very, like, gets very polarized, and increasingly it's getting more right wing. And so I didn't like Twitter that much in the first place, and I have disliked almost everything that Musk did there. So I didn't have a reason to go there. I have Blue Sky now. I also don't use that because, again, I don't like Twitter like as a platform that much, but I do have it mostly so that I can put something on the lower third in the beginning. But yeah, no. The things that are going on in the US right now are deeply worrying. I think both from an American perspective and from a German perspective, or a European perspective in general. The Nazi salute is indicative of some things that are going on there, but I honestly, on some level, think that it's not the most worrying part, because it is, at the end of the day, just a visual, right? Yes, it's signaling that, like, people with a lot of power can just, like, do that and face fairly limited backlash. But
he's untouchable.
Yeah, but, like, again, on some level, that's just signaling, though. Like, the thing that really matters is what they actually do. And, like, yes, it's not good that he did that. And I really wish we lived in a world where, like, that had consequences. But at the end of the day, I'm much more worried about Trump siding with Russia against Ukraine. I am much more worried about Trump withdrawing from the WHO, or Musk basically shattering USAID. Because the thing about diseases is, they don't care about borders. They don't care about where you're from, right? If you stop USAID, who is doing a lot of stuff on HIV prevention and treatments, and they do other things too, right? They do a lot of disease prevention stuff as well, especially in Africa and other poorer countries. They do WHO does a lot of that as well, right? They do disease monitoring and prevention and, like, that sort of stuff. Like, we just had a global pandemic. Like, we really don't need to have another one so soon. Like, I mean, we're gonna have another one eventually. Like, that's inevitable. But, like, it doesn't have to be soon, and it doesn't have to be as bad as it can be, right? Like, why are you, like, withdrawing from all the international mechanisms that could help prevent that, or at the very least make it less impactful, right? Like that is worrying as well. But yeah, I mean, more imminently, I think it is the Russia thing, right? Because if the US is siding with Russia, I mean, luckily, I believe that is mostly going to be in terms of them not supporting Ukraine, that they're not supporting Europe anymore, which is bad enough as it is. But
I couldn't see the US, no matter who is in power, just starting to aid Russia instead of the opposite. I don't think that's going to happen, but pulling out of Ukraine, absolutely, that could happen.
And obviously, that is bad enough, right? Because then, especially, they're trying to force a peace deal, right? So that means that Russia stops fighting, which, I mean, that's great. I like if no one is fighting and dying, but also the reason why they would stop fighting is because they get all or most of what they wanted, and then they can rearm for the next gambit, right? Like, what are they going to do next? Go for more of Ukraine? Okay, that's bad, but, like, it's almost not that bad. But, like, what is it going to be? The Baltics? Poland? Like, those are NATO countries. Like, that means that we're at war, right? Like, I don't like that at all. I mean, again, not that I think it's great that Ukraine's at war, but, like, getting any sort of agreement there that favors Russia is going to be very problematic. Now, Europe is already, like, putting in more support packages for Ukraine. They're trying to pick up the slack. But the fact of the matter is, European defense production is just not where it should be. So we can't fully compensate for what the US is doing right now. And that is tricky because Ukraine is already losing ground. Like,
Mm-hmm.
There was some talk when this started that, oh, Ukraine's actually doing really well and they're pushing back Russia, and they were pushing back Russia for a while because Russia advanced very fast without like having all the plans to back it up, and so they had to withdraw from some places. But at this point, it's they're pretty reinforcing where they are, and Ukraine is not gonna win this on the battlefield, and so that is tough because you can't force Russia to like take a good deal unless there's enough pressure behind it. A good deal as in good for Ukraine and Europe, not good for Russia. They're obviously gonna gladly take a deal that's good for Russia, and so that's not great either. And so a lot of that what's happening in the US is worrying. I also don't like that Musk is getting involved in politics all over the world, most notably in the US and Europe. I think Canada as well a little bit. But yeah, he's gotten involved in the UK for a while there. I think he was endorsing reform, and then he got into spat with Nigel Farage, and now I think that is like not as much of a thing anymore. But he's still like very much in cahoots with the AfD, and I don't like that either. And yeah, we're gonna I think this election is gonna be fine. Like, I am at least like 95% certain that Merz is gonna hold to not going to a coalition with the AfD. So we're probably gonna be fine this time around. But like, if the AfD keeps growing, it's hard to imagine them getting an outright majority. But there's a lot of worrying stuff happening, and the situation in the US is not helping. As a matter of fact, it's like actively hurting a lot of that.
Yeah. But yeah, it is crazy. Like, I can almost understand both sides at certain points in time, because at some point America is going to go bankrupt if we continue on the path we're on. But how do you turn that around without cutting fundings? And you don't want to let Russia or China grow out of control and end up having a chance to actually try to control the entire world, of course. But yeah, I don't know. That's tough. One more thing about Musk, though. Is there any chance that his autistic mind, or I don't know what he's been diagnosed with, but he's socially average, I will say. He's definitely a little awkward in certain ways. That it wasn't meant to be a Nazi salute. That maybe he was attempting to, like, oh, I open my heart to you guys, and it didn't work out.
That's what a lot of people said, right? But I feel like if you accidentally make a gesture that looks like a Nazi salute, and people start calling you out for it, the obvious thing to do is saying, like, whoops, my bad, I didn't mean to do that, or something like that, right? But he never actually walked it back. He deflected a little bit, but he never said it was a Nazi salute, right? He
said it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I feel like his reaction to it seemed to suggest that maybe he was trying to limit the backlash, but it didn't sound like he didn't mean it, right? Then again, he's also the kind of guy who never backs down from anything he says, right? Like, he's not exactly someone who goes like, my bad, I was wrong. So I guess in theory it's conceivable that they just looked like it, and then he didn't want to walk it back, and so that's why he's sticking with it now, basically. But he has certain beliefs that certainly would align with that, and I do think that it likely was intentional. People have put up comparisons of other neo-Nazi groups doing basically the exact same gesture, and so it's hard to imagine it was by accident, but other people doing it since certainly weren't accidental. And even if it wasn't on purpose, it's still, which I do think it was, by the way, but even if it wasn't, it still is emboldening all the wrong people, right? So
yeah, it's almost a gateway for certain people who have the ideology to begin with. Yeah, absolutely. One last thing. I know we got to get on to the other topics, but he is untouchable. The man is untouchable, and most Nazis, neo Nazis, whatever, they're not gonna hide it when asked about it. If they do a Nazi salute and you go, "Oh, what is that? Is that a Nazi salute?" They're gonna be like, "Yeah, yeah, that's what I believe in." You know, they're not gonna be like, "No, that's ridiculous." Like, no, they're not gonna try to hide it, especially a guy who has almost most power in the entire world, which I think he's pretty close to being the most powerful man in the entire world, if he's not already. So, just to play devil's advocate, I think there is a chance that he did not mean that to be a salute.
I mean, again, it's possible, but I think if it was intended to be that way, then I think his lukewarm response to it and the fallout from what has happened basically makes it almost as if it makes it almost as bad as if it was intentional. But I also do think there's a very good chance that it was intentional. Also, on a slightly unrelated note, you said something earlier about the budget, right? And there's two things there. First of all, about 1% of the US budget goes to foreign aid. So that's not the problem. Second of all, the currently proposed budget from the Republicans would add, I think, about $2 trillion to the debt, to the national debt or something. So
I haven't looked into that.
As much as they talk about wanting to cut the deficit, they never do that. Because while they do end up cutting programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and whatnot, they also end up cutting taxes to rich people every time. Like, Trump's first term, I think, ran a bigger deficit than Biden's term, for example. And there's a bit of a problem there. First of all, yeah, Republicans talk a big game about the deficit, but then they don't end up doing anything about it. But also, you're in a terrible position for that because you can't really cut the deficit. I think the last time that a president ran a surplus, for God's sake, was it Jimmy Carter or something? It's been a while. Immediately the next president comes in and does a bunch of spending that is very popular with the people, because when you are sensible about the budget, then people are not going to like that, because you're either going to have to cut programs or you're going to have to raise taxes, and a lot of that is not going to be very popular. And then you just give more fiscal room to the next administration, who's just going to undo your progress and get the brownie points for it. So, unless reducing the deficit is actually a bipartisan issue, neither party is particularly incentivized to actually deal with it. You still there?
Yeah. I'm here. Do you not hear?
No, I hear you, but your camera is frozen and also your connection is a bit troubled.
Yeah. I see this frozen there, but yep, still on the line.
Yeah, I think it's an internet issue. I assume it's on your end. I don't know for sure, because my internet usually either works or doesn't.
Yeah, let me reconnect here real quick.
I guess that brings us to the facts of the week. What is your fact of the week?
All right, this is a pretty interesting one. Did you know that there is an ant species that is unique to only New York City? It is called the Manhattan ants, and biologists found them to be specific to one 14-block strip in New York City. Tiny little space where only this species of ants exist. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that is pretty cool. I do wonder what that tells us about evolution, right? Because they presumably are from that area, right? They adapted to those circumstances. I mean, obviously, you said Manhattan, right? So it makes sense because it's an island. I mean, there are enough bridges that they could cross, right? It's not like the ants couldn't have a way off, but it's not as easy as if it was just an open field. So it does make sense that it happened there. But yeah, no, that is definitely interesting.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if they will spread, much like what are those flies that came from Asia that are invading the Northeast now? I forgot the name of them, but Jarrow spiders are another one that have invaded. The murder hornets and things like that have spread throughout the world.
Yeah, I
Or
mean, gray
I guess
squirrels,
it
although I
makes
think
a
they come
lot
from your
more.
neck of the woods. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
because
But
Europe used to have only red squirrels, and apparently gray squirrels are all competing now. So, uh, once the gray squirrels came
uh-huh.
here, it seems like they are endangering the red ones, which is great.
Oh wow.
You love it
Consider
when
them
invasive
invasive.
species messes with the environment, with the ecosystem.
Hmm.
Speaking of messing with the environment, um, according to reporting from The Guardian, U.S. wildfire suppressants are rife with toxic heavy metals, a study finds. So this was reported recently, this month, based on the LA wildfires, the initial studies from last year. So this is fairly recent. And it says that the U.S. federal government and chemical makers have long concealed the contents of pink wildfire suppressant that is widely spread by firefight aircraft to contain blazes. New results provide alarming answers. The substances are rife with cadmium, arsenic, chromium, and other toxic heavy metals.
Ooh.
So the study found that suppressants are a major source of toxic pollutants that cause heavy metal levels to spike in the environment. And the products themselves contain metal levels up to 3,000 times above drinking water limits. Yeah. And so they said here that the substance was dropped by as many as 25 aircraft daily to contain the devastating Los Angeles wildfires. And yeah, they also allude to photos where you can see like it's very pink, which is because it needs to be visible to the firefighters, like where they sprayed. So you can see that very well where it landed. But yeah, and the results in the study say that where is it? Right. The elements were vanadium, chromium, manganese, copper, arsenic, cadmium, antimony, barium, thallium, and lead. So a lot of very nice stuff that you definitely want to have in your in the ground and your groundwater, and inevitably your drinking water probably, and also like just dropped on your house.
Yeah. Yeah. Please still hear me because the video is frozen again.
Yeah, yours is a bit
Yes.
choppy, but I can understand you. So, it seems to be
Okay.
getting better again. Yeah, it's better again.
Yeah, it keeps fading in and out. They must be doing something with the internet around here, but yeah, that's going to be horrible when it makes its way into the streams and back through the drinking water. Dude, I don't know. They're going to have to put in some unique filtration systems, I guess. That seems pretty harsh.
Yeah, and I mean the worst part is right. Those are like in most countries, they wouldn't actually allow those sort of things to be used because
Yeah.
but it's like, oh, yeah, it's proprietary, so we can do whatever we want. It's like, that I don't think that's how that should work. But apparently this is how it does work. So
No.
Great.
Mm.
But that feels like a very typical U.S. thing in some ways, where it's like, company does thing that's terrible to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess brings
Yep,
us.
it has happened many, many times throughout history.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say brings us to the halftime show. Which
Mm-hmm.
oops, let me. There we go. Which is once again Hurdle Decades, and I guess we'll start with the 50s, which is probably all you. But
wow, they have a 40s now.
Do you want to do 30s and 40s?
Maybe I probably wouldn't get much, but we could try.
Sure, let's try 30s and 40s.
No. Nothing. It actually is starting to sound more familiar,
Yeah,
but I don't know
say,
it right offhand.
It sounds a little familiar, but I think only in as far as it's like generic period piece music they would use in movies, right? Like if you have a scene set during like World War II or something, like this is the music that would be playing in the background
exactly.
on a gramophone. So it's like,
yes,
sure, but I don't know the song.
Yeah.
I wonder if someone's gonna start singing soon, which could be helpful. But otherwise, I don't think we're
gonna exactly. Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Nothing at all. I don't know.
It was Tuxedo Junction by Glenn Miller.
Yep, never heard that one.
Okay, let's go for the 1950s, which I'm probably not going to be much more useful at,
Yeah.
but let's see. That was distinctly louder.
Mm. Yes. Play a little more.
Sure thing. It almost sounds like Venus.
Yeah, that's dang it, I can't think of the name of the song. That's one of the Sun Records guys. One of the White Sun Records guys, one of Sam Phillips' White guys. See, the thing about rock and roll is when it was first being formed, Sun Records was the biggest label at that time. And of course, black people invented rock and roll, so they had a bunch of black artists in there. And they started bringing in these white artists who were doing, country and folk and whatever, and bringing them in and started them on rock and roll. So he had a whole list of white guys: Elvis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins.
How are you feeling about
All
Frankie
these
Avalon?
guys. I don't. Nah, I think he did more beach music, so I don't think it was him.
Because I thought it could maybe. Okay, so there's a song called Venus, right? Which I think the version that you would be more familiar with is by Shocking Blue, but I knew it was a cover of an older song. It almost sounded like it could maybe be that, but I'm not confident by any means.
Yeah.
That being said, if you don't have a better idea,
we can try it. I mean, no, go for it.
Yeah, I was a long shot. Okay, let's actually listen to more.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that I'm hearing it again, I'm not even sure what I was thinking.
Well, see, that's the thing is, it's definitely. I think of the hook. It's definitely that song. But the thing about it is, they would have a song back in those days, and everyone on the label might record that song. So it's just a matter of, if was it Jerry Lee Lewis, was it Elvis, was it Johnny Cash, was it Carl Perkins?
You could also give me a title.
It was one of those guys.
Like I could do
play a little more.
Artists. I can also play a little more. That's definitely an option.
Yeah, that's exactly the song I'm thinking of. What is it like love, a true love, something like that? Yeah, I think it is. I think the title's True Love.
We have True Love Ways by Buddy Holly, Your True Love by Carl Perkins, Just True Love by Bing Crosby and Grace Kelly.
All right, so I don't think it's the Buddy Holly one. Buddy Holly was a little after that era, so I'm going with Carl Perkins.
Your True Love by Carl Perkins. Submit. And that's correct!
Yeah,
You're way too good at this. See, that's the thing. That's the thing. You really know your music. Like, I'll either know the song or I don't know it. You can tell me like the entire history of like why that was recorded and like the genre and the label, and it's like no.
Yeah. Okay. This is either beach music or possibly psychedelic blues or something like that, but I need a little more.
It's just more of the same.
No, I need a little more. Oh, I know that rhythm. Do you got a guess, or can we get a little more?
I have no idea.
All right. Yeah, it is psychedelic blues. That's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want. I want that money. That's what I want. That's what I want.
So
there you go, money.
That's what I want.
Yes.
Now the question is it by the Kingsmen or by Barrett Strong? Because apparently they both sang it.
Yeah, and see, that's what I'm saying. Back in those days, artists would share songs like that. If you were on the same label, there could be 5 different artists that recorded the exact same song and put it on their albums. But it's either the Kingsmen or Barrett Strong.
Yeah, you got no inclination?
I would say just pick one. Yeah, I'm not sure right offhand.
It was the Kingsmen.
Perfect.
I got lucky with
Yeah.
the 50-50. It's just because we're first in the list. That was a tiebreaker. Let's do 70s.
Okay, that one's not ringing a bell right offhand.
I was just gonna say that sounds familiar, but I'm not sure if that's like just like a very typical beginning, or if that's like a specific song that I'm having in mind. Like, it sounds familiar, but I also can't place it right offhand, so I guess we need to listen to more either way.
Yeah.
Well, that's helpful.
Yep. Just a long harmonica intro.
Jesus fucking Christ, how long can you drag that out?
This could be anything. I have a feeling that's all we're going to get. It's just that harmonica
I think it is
intro.
familiar, but I think it's familiar because I think it's this like a typical, like a Western soundtrack kind of thing. I don't think it's a song that I specifically know.
Like Willie Nelson or something.
I think I've heard this before, but probably on a movie soundtrack, so I couldn't tell you who or what.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I may have heard that before. There's not enough of the song to recognize it, so I have no clue.
Yeah, I guess it's gonna be our first skip then. Wait, it's School by Supertramp.
Tramp.
That is not where my mind went at all.
No, not at all. I was thinking Willie Nelson or one of those guys.
Supertramp. Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't ring a bell.
It sounds familiar. Give me a little more. We covered this recently. The guy was in the video. The guy was in the ballroom, I believe.
What is it?
Yeah, well, that's not the name of the song, but that was where they were at in the video. It's one of the. It's the new wave artist.
I can't type in genres.
Play a little more. Play a little more.
A little more, okay.
Dang it. I'm trying to think of the name of the band right now, but I just saw a commercial and they were on tour. They were on tour with like Crowded House or someone. Soft Cell. That's it. Soft Cell.
Well, it ain't Tainted Love, but that's about as much as I can tell you. Soft Cell. Bed Sitter, Say Hello, Wave Goodbye, or Torch? Because I'm pretty sure it's not Tainted Love.
Torch.
Okay.
No, it's not Tainted Love. Torch.
Yeah, that is correct.
There it is.
I think Tainted Love is the only Soft Cell song I know, but
yeah, well, that's their most popular one for sure.
Fair play. How about the 90s? That's Rain. It's raining into a puddle or something. That's just water noises.
Yeah.
That's not music. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they should straight to where the song starts and not where the track starts. But let's get a little more. I need a little more.
It's like a music video, right? When you have like all a bunch of background noise added to the song, like
Yeah,
who wants
exactly.
this?
Oh, come on. Play a little more if this is what I'm thinking it is. Yeah, you know this song. You know that. How many special people change? How many of us living strange? Where were you while we were getting high? It's Oasis, Champagne Supernova.
I mean, speaking of bands that are on tour right now, because Oasis,
Yeah,
no, Oasis,
got back together.
they're back together
Yeah,
during this year, I think.
Noel and Liam
The
finally
Gallagher
worked it out,
brothers,
I guess.
exactly. So, I mean, 2000s. Maybe I'll know that one.
Yeah.
Okay, that was very quiet.
Yeah.
And I think also only in 1 year.
Yeah.
Love me some good stereo mixing. Stereo mixing is, in my experience, almost always bad, though. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, I got nothing, right? Like that should be clear.
No, me either. I have no clue yet. I couldn't even understand it.
He said, like, is it going? Is it going or is it going or something like that? But, like, what the... I don't know. Well, that's 2 words only, but... well, that ain't it. That would have been too obvious.
It sounds like another one where the track just started that way and like just cut straight to the song. We don't need that crazy intro.
Is it going? Is it going? Is it going? Is it going? I don't know. You're looking.
Is this an acapella song?
It
sounds vaguely familiar, but yeah, give me a little more. Let's see if the music kicks in.
Is it going? Is it going? Is it going? Is it going? I don't know. You're looking for.
Oh, that's a Timberland beat right there. Wasn't the you got one more skip, right? Can you play one more?
Yeah, let's play the whole thing.
Is it going? Is it going? Is it going? Is it going? I don't know. You're looking for.
That's a Timberland beat. So it's either Missy Elliott, Timberland and Magoo, Nelly Furtado, one of his artists. I know that beat. Has Missy Elliott?
We have 3 Missy Elliott songs. Get You Are Freak On, Lose Control, and Work It.
It sounds like, I don't think it's Get Your Freak On, but the beat sounds so similar to Get Your Freak On. Lose Control, maybe? Work It. If it worked it, let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it.
I can go through the other ones as well if you want. That was just the first one you said.
Try Nelly Furtado.
Promiscuous has Timbaland listed as a featured artist or as a co-artist.
Promiscuous girl. Yeah. Well, he produced her, so if he adds his voice on there,
Give It To Me is Timbaland
Timbaland
featuring Nelly Furtado and Justin Timberlake. Maneater, I can't. The problem is when you say Maneater, I think I've heard that one before, but I'm always thinking Hall & Oates when you say Maneater, so that's a problem.
Yeah,
I'm
not
Like a
that many
Bird, it
here,
is
yeah.
definitely not.
I'm like a bird, I'll only fly away.
That was actually
Yeah,
nice,
it's not
you
that
know?
one.
I actually like that one.
Yeah, oh, it was. That's a good song, yeah.
But like,
I think it's actually Give It to Me with Timberlake.
it is
Boom!
indeed! Have I ever mentioned that you're
Yes!
way too good at this? Okay, final chance, 2010s. I've almost certainly heard this on the radio before, and I probably don't care for it.
Have you? Doesn't ring a bell, Redfan.
I mean, the problem is a lot of early 2010s stuff sounds like that as well, like late 2000s or 2010s sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've probably heard this before, but like, it's a lot of that stuff which got a lot of airplay that I still don't necessarily know the titles of artists, right? So maybe if I know it, I can get some text, and maybe if I'm lucky, the title is in there. But that's about as much as I'll be able to contribute to this, probably.
Yeah, I have no idea.
There was a time.
I mean, yeah, I've definitely heard this before.
Yeah? That voice doesn't sound familiar. Was it a European hit? Do you know? Well, I guess
it
you don't
definitely got a
know the
lot of
song
airplay
yet, so
here,
you.
but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could be from your side of the pond as well.
Yeah, true. It's not John Mayer.
I don't think so, but it could be. Is it a John with an H, or how do you spell that? Is it just a John without an H?
I believe it's. Yeah, John. I don't know if he's put speech in it, to tell you the truth.
I like, I've heard the name, but like, I have no idea how to spell him, man.
M-A-Y.
Nothing. Nah, they don't even have anything. I've definitely heard the song before, but sadly, that's not very helpful. Anyways, I can hear you again. What were you saying?
Yeah. Oh, I was just saying that the voice doesn't particularly sound familiar. I was just guessing one of those, guys like that, but
I don't think so necessarily, but I don't know the song either right off the hand, so it's not super helpful. I guess we'll listen to more and hope that I can come up with some lyrics, but that's the best I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was a time I used to look into my father's eyes.
Is it not My Father's Eyes? Wait, maybe I have heard this before.
I don't think it is, but
Does sound familiar.
I mean, yeah, it's not called Father's Eyes or My Father's Eyes or anything like that. That would have been almost too obvious.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But that does sound familiar, so maybe I have heard this before.
I mean, I have this very like terrible thing where like the songs actually came out while I was alive. I oftentimes recognize, and as far as I know, I've heard it before, but usually I don't know them that well that I could tell you who it was or what it's called or anything like that. So
yeah.
So like we'll go through this whole thing, and I'm like, oh, this 2000 song or this 2010 song, I know this one, and that's about as much as I can tell you. It's like great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is the whole thing.
If did I? Yeah, exactly.
There was a time I used to look into my father's eyes. In a happy home, I was a king.
I don't know. I don't know it from that. If I do, if I have heard this song, then I haven't heard it enough to memorize
Only thing
any
that's,
other. Maybe I would recognize the whole.
the only thing that's popping into my head are the words "perfect place." I don't know if that. I think those might be lyrics. I don't know if that could be a title, but that's the only thing I can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. That wouldn't be. No, I got nothing.
Yeah, me either.
Don't You Worry, Child. Swedish House Mafia featuring John Martin. That sounds like something that would have been more this side of the pond, maybe.
Yeah, so.
Don't you worry, don't you worry, child. Yeah, no,
That does sound vaguely familiar.
I do know it. It's just like I wouldn't have been able to tell you anything, and I certainly don't know the name Swedish House Mafia. That wasn't even house music.
Yeah, exactly. For some reason, Swedish House Mafia does ring a bell, but I can't recall it right offhand.
Let me do Swedish House Mafia. For fuck's sake. Why does it do that sometimes? Let's try it again. Swedish House. There we go. Swedish House Mafia are a Swedish house supergroup. Okay, so I guess they do make house music. Consisting of Axwell, Steve Angelo, and Sebastian Ingrosso. The group officially formed late 2008. Okay, yeah. We don't need to know their whole history. Let me look at the discography thing really quickly. Okay, they have one album, and 2 compilation albums, 3 live albums, 2 EPs, and a couple of singles. They had... Okay, Don't You Worry, Child was number 6 in the US.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it got any cert, but oh no, it's RAAA's so it got quintuple platinum in the US.
Dang, really?
So, apparently it was quite popular there as well. It got number 1 in the UK, 6 in Switzerland, 5 in the Netherlands, 2 in Ireland, 9 in Germany. It actually did better in the US charts than in the German ones. 4 in Flanders, 5 in Austria, and number 1 in Sweden and Australia. And yeah, 9 times platinum, 11 times platinum, gold, 4 times platinum, triple gold, gold, platinum, gold, double platinum, depending on which country you're looking at. And conveniently enough, it always has the abbreviation of the industry body that gives it out, rather than the actual countries. So I can't tell you which ones of those are where necessarily.
Yeah. I must have missed that one somehow then.
But apparently...
I don't know, like I said, though, it does kind of familiar, but I'm not familiar enough with it to know the lyrics.
Yeah, no, apparently that one was pretty popular. Which I guess brings us to our second topic. Once again, answering some would you rather questions. Would you rather always have to travel by train or always have to travel by bus?
Well, you can access more places without walking if you use the bus. You can go farther. It's going to take longer.
Yes. I feel like this question differs a lot depending on where you are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
As in,
Europe uses
European trains are a lot better.
Yeah.
Like,
we don't have a lot of passenger trains that go from state to state.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think the problem is, I feel like in Europe and in Germany, it's like, if you want to go far, you take the train. If you want to do something close distance, you take the bus, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See,
we have buses that go from state to state, but not trains.
Yeah.
We have subways, every city has their own subway system for the most part.
I mean, we do have those as well in some bigger cities, but we also have the big train networks, especially high-speed trains. I looked at it recently, I think what was it? I'm trying to remember. I think it's like, I think if I go from like, I don't know if it was from here or if it was from like a nearby city, but from here to like Paris or something, it's like 5 hours. Like it's actually like very reasonable. But I think I'd have to go train, because the main route that I would take with a bus is from here to the nearest city, which you can do by train as well. It's slightly more convenient by bus, but like the train route works. The only thing then is once you're in the city, I guess. Oh shit! Right. If I wanted to go from the city center to the university, I don't think there's a train route for that. Which, if I can't go by car, which I'm assuming this implies as well, because then getting out of the city would be tricky. Maybe I do have to pick bus.
Yeah, I'm thinking bus.
Because I think
because it's just much more accessible.
Yeah, I think it's more flexible, right? Because I think there are long distance buses here as well. Like, people don't take them as much, but they do exist.
Yeah.
38% bus, 62% train.
I'm sure they're thinking it's going to be faster travel, but if you have to walk more, it's not going to be faster in the end.
Yeah,
I would assume.
I feel like the question is,
depending on,
do you take this question to mean, like, oh, if you have to pick between bus and train, which one do you pick? Or does the question mean your only mode of transportation is this one? Because if you just be like, oh yeah, do you want to? If the question was the other way around, right? Like, do you want to like never use trains and never use buses? Then I might choose buses, because anything I would use a bus for, I can just go by car. That's fine. But like, that's not what the question was, arguably. So
yeah.
Oh, I think I talked about this with Hollywood before. I talked about this with someone before. Would you rather be able to instantly teleport to any person in your context? Would you rather be able to bring any person in your context to your location instantly?
Oh, I think we may have had this one before. I think it may have been me and you.
I don't recall. Oh no, wait, it would have. Right, no, with Hollywood I usually do the cards that he has, the Would You Rather cards. So it would have been with him. And with Sergey I usually do other stuff. So yeah, no, I guess it would have been with you.
Yeah.
Obviously teleport to any person in your context, we said.
Yes.
Which is 72%, so that was the majority opinion there. And next question.
But of course, always check with the person before you do it.
Yeah.
Get in the shower with them.
Yeah, but it's so flexible, whereas bringing people to you is like, oh, right, that's the other thing, right? Like, bringing people to you is a one-way trip. Right, like they can come to you, but then they have to go back by conventional means. If you go to someone and you live with someone that's also in your contacts, you can just go back. Like, you can go back and forth. Would you rather know everything about outer space or know everything about Earth's oceans?
That is a intriguing question. Outer space. I'm saying outer space.
I mean, I think this is playing on the cliche of like, oh, like, we don't even know everything about our oceans and they're so serious and whatnot, but like, outer space is also very large, right? I think knowing, basically, because I feel like the first one is like, would you like to know everything about everything besides Earth? Right?
Yeah.
It's basically what the first question, the first one is saying. It's like, yeah, no, I'll pick that.
Yeah.
I would also argue that you can't really disentangle those two quite as easily, because the water that came to Earth might have come from outer space, likely. Life on Earth may or may not have come from outer space. They recently discovered amino acids on the samples from Bennu, so the whole transpermia thing might actually be more likely than we previously thought. So yeah, outer space is definitely a good answer here. Also, that means you know if there's alien life. Yeah, 64% said outer space.
Yes.
Would you rather always fall in love too easily or always have a very hard time falling in love?
I already do the second one.
Yeah, I would put myself in that second category as well. And I do think that is probably the better one to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're gonna get hurt a lot if you just fall in love with every person you meet.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking that
Yeah.
it will mean that you will probably fall in love with the wrong person, right? And that
Hmm.
just seems bad, right? Like
And yeah,
there's a lot more bad
and
that
then
can come
right
out of
after that, do it again.
relationship. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that takes it down a pretty bad path. At least if you actually pursue it. If you don't pursue it, then that's just heartbreak in a different sense, right? So I think hard time falling in love
Hmm.
is probably better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 60% of people agree with us. Let's do two more. Uh, would you rather always consciously breathe or always consciously blink?
Hmm. Consciously blink. I, if you can only consciously breathe, though, how do you do it while you're sleeping?
That's an interesting question. I guess you don't. Yeah, so then blink is definitely the right answer.
Yeah.
I was leaning towards blink, but I was still weighing the arguments. But yeah, no, um, this is clearly
Yeah.
blink then. Otherwise, I think it is interesting because I do sometimes have it when I'm like focusing on something too much, right? Like a game or something, like something I'm actually like visually seeing. I can actually sometimes get dry eyes
Yeah.
from not blinking enough. So
Oh yeah.
that
Yeah.
is a thing. And when
Get
you have
that
to
little
consciously do
burning.
it, I think that would not become less of a thing. But also having to
Hmm.
consciously breathe does sound even more tedious. So yeah, I mean it is blink. 60 to 40. So yeah, that 6% agree with us. And
Yeah.
okay, would you rather never lose your phone again or never lose your keys again?
Hmm. Probably my phone. Now, if they added the wallet into this, I'm definitely taking the wallet.
I mean,
But
obviously.
yeah, I'd rather lose keys than a phone for sure. Because you can always get new keys made, and you could change the locks if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, you can always get a new phone.
But, I mean, you could, but you have all that information in there. You're not losing all that information with keys.
I mean, I feel like this is one of those questions that's like very weird for me to take because I use my phone primarily as an alarm clock.
Hmm.
I own a used phone that I bought, like, at this point, probably about 10 years ago for $20. Um, so I guess for me it would be keys. The fact, though, is, and this is where it gets really spicy, I'm fairly certain I've never lost either.
Oh, really? I've never lost a phone. Definitely, I think I've lost keys. Yeah, I've lost keys before, for
Which I
sure.
guess that will be the other argument for why you might maybe should pick keys. If you don't lose your phone anyways, but you do lose your keys sometimes, then not losing your phone doesn't change
Hmm.
anything. Um, yeah, I'm not at risk of losing my phone because I barely ever take it with me anyways.
Yeah,
Um,
see, most of us are. Our life is in our phones, so
and
I'm picking phone myself.
I am definitely taking keys, obviously. Then, um,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, I mean, I don't think I've forgotten my keys before. I think, although even that has been over a decade since I last forgot. I
Mm.
like when I was still in school, I would like once every other year or so would forget my wallet keys, which is not really a problem because when I got home from school, my mother would usually be home, right? So that wasn't even like a big deal. I never lost my keys. I've broken off a key once. That was bad too.
Hmm.
Well, it wasn't that
Yeah.
bad. I managed, like, it broke off with, like, enough sticking out that I could pull it out again out of the lock, and we have enough replacement keys that it
Uh,
wasn't, like, a pressing problem in the moment. But if it had gotten stuck in the lock, it would have been a problem. Especially because I'm not sure how easy it would have been to replace the lock, because we have the same lock on all of our outside doors. So,
hmm.
I'm not sure if we can replace a lock with one that is keyed the same. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it would definitely be possible. I'm just not sure if they actually do that. So,
A locksmith can program the lock to match your other locks.
yeah, I would think so, right? Because I mean, I know what a lock looks like on the inside. It's just like the only thing that matters is like the size of the pin. So that should
Yes.
be doable. Um, anyways, I'm pretty sure I could break down
Hmm.
a lock. It
Yeah,
doesn't
you
seem
probably
hard.
could. You just whatever key you want, you place the key in there, and then you match the pin sizes up to it.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm picking keys, you pick phone. Obviously, I can only click once, so I'm picking keys. 64 said phone and 36 said keys, which is hardly surprising. I knew that I was an outlier here.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Which brings us to everyone's favorite segment, Songs of the Week. What is yours, Song of the Week?
Oh, this time I picked the O'Reillys and the Patty Hats with Barrels of Whiskey.
I make barrels of whiskey, it ain't no champagne. It's something our bosses who keep away the pain. What I share with you, my lad, is the biggest secret I've ever had. I make barrels of whiskey, it ain't no champagne. It's something our bosses who keep away.
The bag. Ah, what a great song.
I mean, it's not an all-time favorite of mine or anything, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. So you knew about the song before now, right?
I think I've heard it before, but honestly, not that often.
Uh-huh.
This is definitely one of those that
They
I
are
have to at
German
least consider
band,
adding to my music list. But yeah.
Yeah. They are a German band. I'm not sure where at in
thought
Germany,
so.
but
Okay, so here's the fun thing,
Mhm.
right? First of all, apparently there's a lot of German bands doing like Irish folk music, and second of all, he said
Mhm.
Brussels.
Yeah.
He pronounced brothel, Brussels. I was like, is he German? Like immediately.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
it's just like
But you can tell
it's very
he's
noticeable.
trying to do an Irish accent, though. I'm sure they have Irish ancestors, but
I wouldn't even be so
you
sure of
can
that.
hear that.
But
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like the accent, like when he said brothel, like when it came out as Brussels, like that was like a very typical German thing to do. I was like, wait, that sounds German.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But overall, a great song, man. That band is awesome. They have really great. I guess you call them violins in Germany, or is it fiddles like it is in Ireland?
Well, I mean, the actual German word would be Geige or Violine, although Violine is more
Okay.
fancy.
Yeah.
But sometimes, especially when it comes to folk music, they are actually just also called fiddle in German.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, they have some great fiddle players in that band.
I mean, if you want to do Irish music, you better be fiddling, right? Like that. That's kind of a. I feel like
Exactly.
that kind of goes with it.
Yeah, that's a key. Yeah.
I mean, either that or you get into the Irish bagpipes, which, apparently are slightly different from the Scottish
Or
ones.
accordion.
But, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, good
Yeah,
song.
accordion. Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that brings us to my song of the week, which is The Price of a Mile by Sabaton.
Gotta love the history lesson that Sabaton gives you in every song.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this one is like about anything specific. I mean, obviously it's trench warfare, right? Like it's just it's about the First World War, but I don't think they are like talking about any one particular battle. But then again, I guess that's kind of the thing about trench warfare, right? It was just like a constant back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, this is definitely this is about the cost of war, right? And that is paid in lives. It's the whole thing where like, what is it in war? No one wins. Yeah, this is. I mean, it's obviously a great message and a great band, good song, right? I quite like this one. I don't know, it like randomly popped into my head this morning. Like I woke up, right, and the song was like somehow like popped into my head. And I was like, huh, that could be a song of the week.
That actually happened to me with Ghost Division recently. I just woke up and Ghost Division was in my head. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, it happens.
But yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was my song of the week, which I guess brings this episode of the Trash Talk Podcast to a close. If you liked what you saw, then give this video a like. If you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have something to say, leave a comment below. Smokey.
That's it.
That's it.